Well, Kevin, thank you, sir, for a second appearance this week on the program.
Always a pleasure. I'll do it 5 days a week.
Listen, you had a post on the corner earlier today. I guess the folks at Media Matters have gone after you for your comments regarding Al-Qaeda and their war against gun shows.
Yeah, as we talked about before, there's just been this ridiculous story that you can walk into a gun show and buy a fully automatic machine gun, and I'd written a correction on that and criticizing the people who had repeated this canard, Mayor Bloomberg and New York Daily News and Media Matters among them. And so these buffoons at Media Matters published this long justification of themselves, saying, well, okay, maybe you can't technically buy a machine gun, but you can buy conversion kits, and which is just basically the same thing, which is, of course, totally untrue. I mean, as you guys, I don't need to tell you, as far as ATF is concerned, if you own a conversion kit or an automatic sear or anything like that, you own the whole gun.
Right.
And they'll be happy to put you in prison for it forever. So, and then they linked to this study of, well, if you go to gun shows, you can buy all this, all the parts you need to switch one over and all that. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I'll check it out. And I read the study, and it was, from the early 90s, so it's kind of old.
Okay.
But it was a GAO report, and it actually was interesting and true that the GAO inspectors went to several gun shows, and they found these parts for sale that you would need to convert a semi-automatic to a fully automatic. But what they found was that these were shipments of munitions that had been hijacked from the U.S. Department of Defense. It was stolen military hardware being sold at a few gun shows some places. So, we've already got a law against stealing military hardware and selling it on the black market. We don't actually need another law about that. I mean, if anything, this just, shows something that I've argued off and on for a long time, which is that one of the reasons they pay so much attention to guns is because it's easier to police guns and gun store owners, who are by definition law-abiding people, than it is to police criminals.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
look,
lazy law enforcement.
Well, lazy law enforcement, lazy politicians, I think,
Yeah.
as well. When you have these programs, I don't know if you saw the story, but apparently the NYPD is going to be melting down several hundred firearms and making a peace statue out of them. That to me is something that you do instead of going after the criminals. But all right, so. The Media Matters piece, once again, they still can't get it right.
No, and then they published a little note today on their website that said, note, as we noted earlier, you can't actually buy fully automatic weapons at gun shows, but you can buy conversion kits, which is still wrong. It's still untrue. Well, okay, if you can, which, now, I've never seen one for sale in my whole life, and I've been to, I don't know how many gun shows, a lot. But if you could, if they are for sale, it's a crime for them to be for sale. We already have a law against it. It's already a big old federal felony of the lock-you-up variety. And they just don't seem to be able to get the story right, even in their corrections.
And there's still the larger point, Kevin, of these gun control groups, Media Matters, Washington Post, and others, carrying water for, what do you call them, Azam al-Berkeley?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, anytime you're taking Al-Qaeda as your Al-Qaeda propaganda as your source material, you might want to, fact check that.
I mean, I don't remember back in the 80s the Parents Music Resource Center saying, well, look, the Ayatollah says heavy metal can rot your brain.
Yeah, I mean, the Ayatollah might have had a point about that, but, I mean, I like it anyway. But, yeah, I mean, who do you want to get in bed with, really? I mean, politically, I'm pro-life, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to apologize for people who bomb abortion clinics and things like that. You don't want to associate yourself with people like that. There are people who are lunatics who share my opinion on one or two things. I'm not going to go endorsing their views.
And you don't go cite them to make
I'm
your
sure
arguments.
not to. I mean, David Duke may have really sensible ideas about taxation. I don't know. I've never heard him talk about it. But if he does, I don't want to hear him.
Right. And if you're making your case, you could probably find plenty of other people who could make your argument better than citing David Duke.
Yeah, they're just, as soon as I saw that,
that's what's bizarre to me about it.
I knew that it was just going to be repeated and repeated and repeated.
I think it's, Kevin, honestly, I think it's because they're so desperate at this point for relevance. I mean, look what's happened in the past 3 years. You know, economists and criminologists all said that the violent crime rate should have gone up. The economy went south, and the violent crime rate should have soared. And instead, in the last couple of years, where gun sales have been really robust, the economy's tanked, and violent crime's gone down across this country. I mean, their worldview is shaken to the core. So if they're clutching desperately for relevance, I understand it. I just think that clutching to the words of a Al-Qaeda propagandist is pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, can't we just shoot this guy? But then okay, he's an American citizen, you can't just shoot him. But one of my own guys, Cliff May, writing here at National Review, took a similar kind of line with these guys. Well, maybe they have a little point because there are a few conservatives right now who are mostly national security types who are really pushing this. Well, we need a list of all the terror suspects so we can keep them from buying guns.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're going to do that, basically you're going to get rid of every private transaction in firearms in the country.
Right.
I mean, that's what the whole gun show loophole is really about. It's not about gun shows. I mean, they hate gun shows because of the people who go there.
Yeah.
But they don't want there to be any such thing as a firearms transaction that doesn't go through the federal government. I mean, that's what they want.
Right.
I mean, that's their next step on the agenda. And I think that it's unfortunate that guys like Cliff, who, I mean, means well, and his heart's in the right place, and we all want to fight the terrorists, are caving in on this and saying, well, we'll go with them on that because we'd like to keep these guys from buying guns. Well, there are better ways to do that. If we'd had proper customs and immigration enforcement, if we just handled the visas the way we're supposed to, there would have been no 9/11.
Right.
Those guys wouldn't be here.
Right.
And if you think you've got good enough evidence on a guy that you can put him on a list and strip him of his constitutional rights to buy firearms, well, if he's a foreign national, then you expel him. And if he's an American citizen, you charge him with a crime. And if you don't have enough evidence to charge him with the crime, then you sure don't have enough evidence to secretly strip him of his constitutional rights under the Second Amendment.
Absolutely. And Kevin, it's rare that somebody puts it that bluntly and succinctly, but I'm glad that you did because you're absolutely right about this. And look, nobody is saying they want to make it easier for terrorists to do harm to Americans.
Yeah.
But the idea again that you all of a sudden say the mere presence of a name on a list, you're not a formal suspect in a crime. You again, if the evidence is there, arrest them.
Yeah.
If it's not, you can't. What other rights do we start taking away?
Yeah, I mean, why not take away their First Amendment rights?
Can we take away? Why should they vote?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, honestly, why should they vote?
Yeah, well, there's that too. I think one of the things that would be helpful, and we need to get back to doing this in this country, is we need to draw, for law enforcement matters particularly, a really, really bright line between U.S. citizens and non-citizens. Now, people who aren't citizens, I don't care. I honestly don't care how we treat them. We've got a little bit of suspicion that, some guy from Egypt is meaning us harm here. Get rid of him. Put him on an airplane, send him back. If you don't want to charge him with a crime because you don't have the evidence or whatever, I don't care. That's fine. You can export those people. I mean, you can deport them. That's why we have separate countries. So you can send them back to theirs. But when you're talking about U.S. citizens, you have to respect their rights. You have to respect due process. And I think that Cliff and some of the other conservatives who've gotten on the wrong side of this issue need to reflect on that.
All right. Well, listen, Kevin, always a pleasure talking to you, sir. Look forward to doing it again soon.
My pleasure. See you soon.
Kevin Williamson with National Review Online. Join us here tonight on Cam & Company.